What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have something pretty awesome on the workbench. Well, obviously it's awesome because it's a Stryfe, but we're going to make this Stryfe more usable for today's gameplay, at least for me anyway. And we're going to also take this thing to the next level with another mod coming down the road. So yeah, I don't really want to give that away too much. So make sure you're subscribed and ring that bell for notifications because you're definitely not going to want to miss this. But first, we got to do some modding to the Stryfe. And I got some parts here. These are templates that allow us to minimize our Stryfe and make it Talon compatible. Because I don't really use full links anymore, so that's not really going to help me out at all. So if I'm doing any Stryfe mod, it's got to be Talon compatible. Now, obviously, you can do a lot of things that don't require minimizing your Stryfe to make it that way, but I want to go, beyond that and make this thing smaller. This is done by Hawkeye. He has a new website out. I'll link it in the description. You can actually get this for free, but he does ask for a donation if you are willing to make one, and I highly recommend doing so because this does take some work to kind of figure this out, and I'm really glad that he went to the trouble to do that because I don't have the 3D modeling skills really to do something like this. So pretty cool that he did this. I think he did a while ago, but I'm finally getting around to doing one. Let's go ahead and do it and we'll see how it goes. Before we get into this too much, we're going to have to obviously take all the internals out of this. So I'm going to go ahead. I already got all the screws out, so we'll go ahead and turn this over and let's get started. All right, so these guys right here fit in. So there we go. That's what we're gonna have as our templates to allow us to cut. And we're gonna have to hot glue these on, and then we can cut the blaster down the middle and then cut each side precisely or close to precise, and then file it to precision. So that's the plan of attack. So you definitely need a Dremel. Bandsaw would be nice, but I don't have one of those, and you definitely don't need one. And then some files. A file set is crucial to this, so definitely need those. I think any person that's doing this kind of modification should have a file set. So we'll go ahead and get started. So we have this guy right here, and this is going to be our guide to make sure that things are spaced correctly. So when we hot glue it, we want to make sure that fits in there nice and even, and we don't have things going like that where there's more of a gap up here than there is down here, or vice versa. So very important. And I'm just going to tack these into place and then mark my lines and then cut it out. Pretty straightforward. Alright, so I think we have this side pretty well set into place, ready for some hot glue eventually. That's about as good as it gets, I feel like. And one thing, when you do end up attaching these together, if you plan on trying to attempt this, you got to make sure it's perfectly straight. So I went ahead and filed this down because I want that flat anyways, and took the battery door off, and then this side should be perfectly flat if you have a flat surface to work on. So then that should be straight. Now you still want to make sure it doesn't do this, and that's why it's so important to make sure this is close as possible to straight, so you don't have, you know, it going this way or that way. But we'll double check everything, and that's why you want to tack it with some hot glue, which I have some ready here, so I might go ahead and tack this side to see how it looks. But we'll go ahead and tack that there and there. It probably will still flex a little bit. Still moving a little bit. We gotta make sure it's straight everywhere. I mean, there's a lot of lines to use to make sure everything is lined up, obviously. I went ahead and removed the Nerf logo because you're going to want to remove that anyway. And it was just easier to do before you put it all together. And it'll keep this flush so you can kind of make sure that it's nothing's raised up there. And then I also like to use this mold line right here to make sure that this is lined up. And probably the hardest part, probably should have showed you this before I glued it together, but tacked it together anyways. But getting this flat here, this part here flat on the back side, is probably the hardest part. You really have to take off quite a bit. The guide was really helpful, but you need to just make sure you keep that as flat and square as possible. And you have to take off more than you think. But yeah, that's probably the most difficult part, but that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and tack the top here too. There we go. That should be good for now, and we'll go ahead and basically do the same thing on the other side. This side should be a little easier because you don't have the battery tray to work around, so let's get going. Alright, so I got that all pretty much done, but there is one part you have to do after you remove this part. You have to basically notch out this, because you can't get, there can't be a trace mark for that, because there has to be a lip there to kind of hold it on and make sure all the other areas are done correctly. But it's pretty easy. You just have to make a little notch for this guy to slide into. So you just need to make that thickness and go all the way to where that line is. So you can trace it if you want to. I kind of made a mark there-ish. So yeah, that's the thickness. You can even go like this if you want to. But yeah, basically we just need to file that out. I would recommend using a file, not dremeling it. A needle file like this will work great. And we'll just kind of take it down until we get to that line. Make sure it's square as much as possible, and then hopefully it'll all fit together nicely. Alright, I think that's going to be good. Looks pretty good there. We will check with this other side. That looks pretty square. Good to have a flat edge too, to kind of just double check stuff. Obviously this should be flat since we put it on a flat surface, and it looks to be pretty darn good. We want to check the top and make sure it is flush. Now it's the thing that's really nice about the Stryfe is there is a lot of flat areas. That's why it's really nice for integrations. So if you go the top of the top rail to the top of this guy right here, little sight guy, that should be flat. You can also just do that if you don't have a flat edge with the table. You kind of look there, get eye level with it, and make sure that it is flat. There isn't any humps or bumps. It looks pretty darn good. So that looks good. There's other areas you can go off of. This is sloped here, but this line right here should be in line, I believe, with this line right here. So we'll check that. But if that top part is straight, this part should be straight too. And that looks pretty darn good. Things look pretty good there. Obviously, it's just hot glued in right now, so things can move easily, so you gotta be gentle. But we will go ahead and assemble this and see how it looks on the other side. See how close we got. And that's obviously really good. I mean, you're gonna have a little bit of a gap, and you got to put glue in there anyways. So it's better to have a little bit of space rather than not enough space, because that will change the alignment of your blaster. So it's pretty crucial that this is lined up, because obviously you have a flywheel cage that, you know, and the pusher has to push, you want it to push straight into the flywheel cage. So getting that perfect is kind of important. So we'll take our time. I'm going to hot glue this in, and we'll see how good it is. All right, so as you can see, that's pretty much perfect, and I love the way everything has come together. Everything looks square and straight, which is good. Everything is flush. So yeah, we'll just have to, I think I'm going to remove this glue, and then we'll Devcon MMA this side together, and then we'll do the other side. This side I feel like a little easier to do because it's so flat. There isn't the overlap of the battery tray. So it probably kind of depends on how your cuts went, but you know, you want to get one side perfect and then do the other side. So I feel like I can see that this is perfect here, and I can get that pretty straight, and then we'll do the other side. But definitely make sure it's all good with hot glue, tack it, double check, triple check, make sure everything is flat. Obviously, if you put glue on this side, it's not going to sit flush like this, but you can check with, you know, your square, make sure everything's flat, everything is still in line here. Yeah, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and we'll take some alcohol, which does help you remove this hot glue, and remove the hot glue and put that side, lock this side in, and then we'll have to let it cure for a little while, and then we'll do the other side. All right, you guys, so that turned out really well. Very happy with how that turned out. And just to be clear, if you're planning on doing this, you have to use a Devcon, well, not Devcon necessarily, but a plastic welder or MMA. There's a Loctite version that I've used before, and it's good too. You can usually find those at Home Depot or Lowe's. I can't remember which one I used to find it at, but I usually just pick up these off of Amazon now because I like the Devcon, and it comes in bulk, and I usually use quite a bit of it when I need it. So I'll leave a link in the description. All right, so we've modified the shell part, but we still need to get this prepped for the magwell and for the catch. So I printed these off, but as soon as I printed these off, he came out with a V2. So now I'm printing the V2 of these. I don't know the difference. I'm not sure what he changed, but we will find out soon enough. But I'm glad that happened before I finished this video, and they gave me an alert that there was an update to the files, and that was really awesome because I don't usually get those. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm printing that off now, so we'll have to wait a second on that. But I know that we have to do some work to create a gap here for the catch. And there's a little piece right here that kind of gives you a guide for that. All right, so this slides in right like that, and it will give you the depth of the cut that you need right down here. And then I believe we want to trace this line here, and the other line that we need is just behind this piece of plastic right here. So you just want to cut right after that, and then we'll trace the rest, and we should be good. It should be pretty straightforward. This should give us a pretty good guide of where we want to cut at. And I like to trace this with a X-Acto to get a little closer, more exact spot of the depth there. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, if you just trace out the inside of that area, it should be pretty close to exact there. But just make sure that that top line is right here. All right, we'll go ahead and Dremel that out, and then we'll test fit our mag release. Alright, I think that looks good for now anyways. Should be pretty good there, and we'll definitely double check that obviously after we get this in. But we need to do a few modifications obviously to get the magwell to fit. And you have to remove, I believe, both of these tabs, and then you have to shave down this back side pretty low. Now, I'm pretty sure that's the same. I'm going to wait until those come off the printer, but I'm pretty sure that's what we have to do. But I do know we have to remove some stuff up here for the mag to go up. We have to remove this right here and that guy right there, so the mag can go all the way up in. And then on this side, we have to remove this here and this here. So I already removed a little bit of the inside there to help me get this together, but we'll go ahead and remove the rest of it. Side cutters is a good tool to use for this, I feel like. Just do this all the way across. Pretty easy to do that right there, and then you can take a file or sandpaper and make that nice and smooth, and that should be good. All right, I have two versions of this, and now I know what the difference is, and it's very small. They're both fine. They both would work just fine, but as you can see, this is the V1, and it has like a V shape here, and the V2 is shaped a lot more like the magazine. So I do think that's an improvement for sure. That looks a little bit better. Probably not a huge deal. You probably won't ever see it, but it may help feed your magazine in a little bit better there. So that's probably a good thing. So we'll go ahead and use the V2 since we printed that off. And we'll prep our shell so those will fit. So to get these to fit, you can see this groove is pretty deep, but this one's pretty shallow. So we basically have to remove this whole ridge. You don't have to remove it all the way down flush, but probably 2/3 of the way at least. And then you have to remove this nub on this side, and we have to square this back side off. So pretty easy, really. I mean, if you've done this part should be pretty straightforward. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to use my side cutters to remove this because that's pretty easy to do. These you can just twist off with pliers pretty easily. And then you can clean it up with side cutters if you want. There you go. See? That's how easy that is. And this will have to be done on both sides of the shell. So we'll go ahead and knock that out. Alright, so I think that's good. Should be set there. I'll show you kind of how it looks like here. So that's what it needs to look like in the magwell. So that's squared off, just right in line with that. Basically, just follow the lines that are there and kind of square that off more or less. And then, yeah, remove, just like I said, remove those to almost all the way down. And we should be good. Just make sure everything sits in nicely. Like that. If this isn't flush here, you gotta kind of hold it up in the air to make sure it's right. But if this isn't flush here and there, more or less, then you probably need to take off a little more. But always put them both together and make sure everything fits up nicely before you glue anything down. That should be good. Looks good there. And then I would wait to glue these down. I would definitely put the blaster back together, put the mag release in, and just check that way, just to make sure you have it where you want it. I mean, it's going to stay in there just fine for the most part, even without gluing them down. So you probably don't even really have to do that. I would probably do it once you're set with what you want to do, but that'd be like the last step. So I'm going to go ahead and put the mag release back in a few parts, and we'll see how it does. This mag release needs a little bit of file work here on this corner because this prints like this, and there's like a little post that is off of this. You break that off. It should just break off, at least mine did, or you can cut it off, I guess. And then you just need to file that down right there. Definitely don't file the top part though. This needs to be flat. Mine actually has a little flashing, so I probably could knock that off a little bit. And then you need to file this so this peg has a little support on it, so you just need to make that round. And yeah, it should be good. We'll go ahead and test like this first though. Alright, so I threw the mag release back in and the trigger. I didn't put the spring on though, but it'll kind of help us make sure everything's lined up. And then we should be able to make sure this catches. That's the most important thing first off. And it doesn't want to go in, which means it probably needs to be sanded more. Let me check again. There, so it's a little tight, does work. It just needs to be, that ledge that I was talking about needs to be sanded a little bit more. The pusher though does seem to be going through the magazine, so that's good. So we should be set there. But yeah, we'll just sand down that just so you get this to slide in a little bit smoother. It may work itself in over time too, but I feel like that can be a little bit smoother. It's a little bit better already, actually. So maybe it was just stuck there at first. But that's something you're going to have to kind of play with, and that's what the file is for right here. So overall, I think that is pretty much everything you have to do with this mod. I'm not going to put internals into this and fire it off yet because there's a lot more I'm going to do with this, so definitely stay tuned for that. I will be unveiling what I'm planning on doing with this in the next video, or at least in this series, so definitely stay tuned. Definitely look into this kit if you think you can pull it off. It's definitely takes some skill, but hopefully with this video, Hawkeye's guide video, you guys can do it, you know. Not great for keeping your blaster looking stock though, because you do have to sand all this down, and you won't have, you know, a jam door. You probably could minimize the jam door to fit in there, honestly, if you wanted to. All things that you kind of have to do. It is some work, but I think it's worth it. So can't wait to continue on with this blaster. Thanks guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this mod guide, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.